Hello and welcome to the Let's Talk Azure podcast with your host Sam Foote.
And Anne Armstrong.
If you're new here, we're a pair of Azure and Microsoft 365 focused IT security professionals.
It's episode 26 of season 5. Sam and I had a recent discussion around Microsoft's new Unified Security Operations Platform. Here are a few things we covered. What is a SOC? What is Microsoft's Unified Security Operations Platform? And what are the benefits of this platform to SOC analysts?
We've noticed that a large number of you aren't subscribed. If you do enjoy our podcast, please do consider subscribing. It would mean a lot for you to show your support to the show.
It's a really great episode, so let's dive in.
Hey Alan, how are you this week?
Hey Sam, not doing too bad. How are you?
Yeah, good, thank you. Good, thank you. Did the world melt down this week? What happened?
Oh yeah, I kind of forgot. Well, I didn't forget about that, but I forgot that we should probably maybe talk about that a little bit. There's a worldwide IT outage from for Windows operating systems, at least. I guess it's from an update to a CrowdStrike agent this time. It's just unfortunate, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I just my gut is that at the moment I suppose we need to be in hug ops mode to the poor people at one CrowdStrike and also any customers that were affected, right? I think for me it's really highlighted how much control a lot of software has over our machines, if that makes sense. You know, how deep rooted, I suppose, all, like, I would say sophisticated EDR systems are, right? You know, they all have, I think to get the telemetry that they need to be at sort of kernel level, right? And I suppose with that there's just an inherent risk that, you know, like we'll call it just a dodgy content update could start to cause issues.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess there's been some discussions in the community around why a security product has so much access, and you're kind of right. I think there's some EU kind of requirements to allow all products have the same access as Microsoft does to the operating system. So it's for fairness kind of thing. So it's not. It's just unfortunate that there was a mishap with the update going out to those endpoints. It could happen to any provider, application, things like that. It's just unfortunate at this time, I think. Obviously there's been a lot of, I guess, anger at CrowdStrike for causing it, but it could be anybody. It could be any of the products that do it, and take out some of it. I think it just kind of ties down to sort of patch management at this point. How do you manage these updates going out? We've seen Windows updates cause issues with the operating system. Sometimes crashes, but sometimes functionality failures. And we've kind of built that sort of deployment rings sort of scenario, especially with Windows 10, Windows 11, at least with the capability within Intune and things like that, and Windows Update for Business. But that's kind of been built because of that. Everyone gets a patch on Patch Tuesday, and then everything not necessarily everything fails, but there's a problem across your organization. We've now learned to mitigate that risk, I guess, by only doing subsets of users in on day zero, and then expanding out across the business. So it's just that sort of mentality, I guess, and maybe it's just not been thought about for third party applications, kind of thing, or maybe the capability's not there. I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of what you can do with patching, the update sort of schemes for CrowdStrike. So it might just be there. It's just users don't configure it.
I think for me, it really highlights disaster recovery and business continuity. And I'm not sure how many organizations would have gone to the sort of extent of, testing and theory crafting, whether their EDR was going to cause, rolling blue screens, right? But my thing is what if 365 was down? What if Entra was down? Let's say there's like a global outage for Entra. I don't know if that could technically conceivably happen. But again, who would have called this last week, I suppose?
Yeah.
What if there was a hardware issue? Let's say there was some random edge case or race condition in Intel or AMD CPUs, which meant they're hard locked at a certain time. Because I've seen, I think I can obviously feel the pain of having to log into each machine, reboot via safe mode or, reboot it consistently. But then we've also seen cases of, do you have access to all your BitLocker recovery keys, as an example?
Yeah.
Where you store those recovery keys, is that machine also in a constant infinite boot loop? Does that itself have BitLocker on it? Should it have BitLocker on it so you can always get into it? I'm not singling out any organizations or anything like that. I just think that because we rely, and then that's what this podcast is. It's Azure, isn't it? We've moved to this hyper connected and converged world of of resources in the cloud and third-party providers. So I think it just really calls out organizations' business continuity plan. How often does it happen? What's the impact? But that's all got to be taken into account. But it is kind of scary. The TikTok that I saw of, there were two people at an airport, and one was up a ladder with a laptop plugged into like a airport display screen, and they were obviously in safe mode, and they had a command prompt, and there was another person footing the ladder at the bottom, and you think it's not just endpoints like where you can ring up a user and tell them how to get through it, or all the users come into the office and they just rotate and bring their laptops through for recovery. But some of these POS terminals, which are they're in not easy to reach places, but they are also internet connected, if that makes sense, right? So I dread to think what some IT teams have had to deal with over the past, what is it now, 5 days or so,
Yeah, well, we're hearing, airports are now sort of running and things like that. And maybe some of the banks are now, transacting correctly. But yeah, there are still outages in those locations. Just, core services are now up and running, aren't they? Because it unfortunately, it didn't just affect Windows endpoints, like you said. It is also Windows servers as well. So you had back end services going down potentially. So, and
yeah, and I'm wondering if user laptops and endpoints were affected, but less affected because
they were off,
just because they were off, or they were asleep, or that user happened to shut down their machine every night, or something like that,
yeah. Well, it depending on what time zone you're in, I guess, because
exactly, yeah,
because when the patch went out, a certain area might have been in the night where, like you said, laptops are turned off, it's end of the work, so they didn't get affected, but all the servers maybe did because they're on 24/7.
Yeah, I just think it's a good. If you're affected by it, obviously you're going to have lots of internal challenges, anger, X, Y, and Z. And but if you're also on a different product, I think it's going to be a bit of a wake up call for some organizations to make sure that they have actually at least theorized how they would approach that type of situation, and tried to protect themselves in some way. But it's so connected, so interconnected. And when you're talking about security, because it wasn't a sensor update, I don't believe. I think it was a content update. So
Okay.
trying to describe to your board that your delay, real time content, or and I'm going to butcher this. Read the actual, because they started to post incident reports and things like that. I would say they are actually quite detailed. And it was sort of a telemetry gathering update or something like that. So how are you going to describe that to your board? Of like, oh yeah, those 0 days that I've been talking to you about for like forever to justify some of this tooling. Should we wait a day before we we get any content updates? Right? I don't know, and I don't know that world. I think the same as you, so I don't really want to get caught up in like pointing the finger, if that makes sense. But I think people are going to have to ask questions.
I mean, I guess as well, the general incident itself. I guess there is a discussion about the process to going to production for these updates as well, I guess, isn't there, within an organization? Now, not to say that that the CrowdStrike doesn't have any of this in place at all, but is that when even within your own your organizations and deploying updates to your websites and things like that, it's obviously not going to be as impacting. It might just impacting to yourself, but doing all that testing correctly to make sure that there is no issues with it as it goes through that product, would you call it product life cycle kind of thing, from dev to staging to prod, or non-prod to prod.
I just don't know if that's really that achievable in the sort of reactive speed that,
true,
I'll call it, like, EDR content, let's just wrap it up into that, needs to flow through with, because I saw loads of bickering on X, and lots of people are like sending screenshots of their Windows event logs showing how often Defender updates, and pushes down like new content. There's like, is there any way that a human could review all of that, if that makes sense?
No, it's true,
because it's not like software where if you don't get it out today, then the only person that you're going to annoy is like your customers because they haven't had it, or your boss because you haven't hit your deadlines. This is like, if you don't get the content to the boxes, then your job as a security vendor to protect your endpoints, are you fulfilling that requirement? I don't know. There's some big questions there.
And I guess if it's content, it might be automated.
Yeah,
coming
correct.
from the various sources to then build that automatically build that content and create it and send it out, kind of thing. So
and I think we're also too close to the actual event. I think it's going to take some time for it to all flow through. About, because I think for them to rebuild trust with their customers, they're going to need to really explain, I think in at least simple terms, what preventative measures they've put in place, and that's not me criticizing them, but it's me sort of saying that hopefully we will find out end to end why it happened and how it's not going to happen again. Fingers crossed,
Yeah.
So hug ops for everyone, I think, on both sides. Hug ops, and well, my gut was like, that could be anyone next week. That was my gut. So anyway, sorry. What are we that slight topic out of the way? What are we talking about this week, Alan?
So we're going to talk about Microsoft's new. I say new. It's probably been out or coming out in public preview, but it's now gone GA, generally available. But Microsoft's Unified Security Operations Platform, to kind of talk about what it is, and probably an update to an episode we did at the beginning of this season. Just to kind of talk about it and how, some of the benefits to it, if you're in that Microsoft kind of ecosystem.
Okay, yeah. So security operations, I think the sort of big component here is a security operations center. So do you want to start there, Alan, and sort of give us an overview of what a security operations center is sort of there to do?
Yeah, so a security operations center is kind of a function or a team within an organization. And we'll talk about it within an organization. I'll talk about sort of, external sort of SOCs and things like that. That is there to, help improve the organization's cybersecurity posture, but also to prevent, detect, and respond to any threats. So this is looking at your security products, looking at the instance that they're generating, or looking at their logs to then understand what activity might be happening. So this could be this is all tied into a SIEM product, where all your logs are going into and all your instance, so you can see it in one place, and then allows you to, that team, the SOC analysts, then run through, the incidents that are happening, triaging them, seeing if it's a real threat or if it's just a false positive, or just checking, generally just checking, whether this is something that needs to be sort of dealt with. The teams, may be on site, in the organization, or like I said, it could be outsourced to a MSSP, a managed security specialist provider. I think that's the terminology. I have to double check that in a minute. But yeah, it could be outsourced to a third party who looks after it for you, because they can scale the team to meet your needs, so you don't have to have internal resources doing it for you, kind of thing. So that's kind of the main thing. They monitor things like identity endpoints, servers, databases, network appliances, maybe your websites, and just potentially also doing some proactive hunting. Something that might be happening in the world, an attack that's been publicly announced as being across the world. They can then start checking to see if their mitigations are in place within your organization, or if you're check for indication of compromise, IOCs, within your environment, to see if that maybe you've been compromised, or there's an indication that there's the start of an attack against you. So that's probably kind of a SOC in a quick nutshell. Again, that they're normally 24/7, 365 days of the year. And again, that if it's internal, it could be one or two analysts, or it could be 10, 20, 30 analysts. It depends on the size of the organization and how much information they need to process and go through, I guess, as well.
Okay, thanks, Alan. Yeah, and I suppose the product that we're talking about today, what is Microsoft Unified Security Operations Platform, and sort of how does it integrate?
Yeah, so this has kind of been a transformation of one of the Microsoft portals. So this is the URL being security.microsoft.com. That was sort of the security portal for things like Defender for Endpoint originally. And then it kind of morphed into this. They started bringing in some of the products into that same sort of location, and it became the Microsoft Defender XDR portal, which kind of still is today. But what Microsoft have kind of done then is they've now made it into their unified security operations platform, and what they've done is brought in their SIEM capability now into that portal, so it's all in one place. So if you're in the Microsoft ecosystem and you've got a fair amount of the security products, including Microsoft Sentinel, you can now see it all in one place. and that really is the idea that Microsoft are going on now, is that it's a one-stop shop for your your SOC analysts or your security analysts, to be able to see your entire estate and across all of the Microsoft security suite that they've got, and they are continuously bringing in other products of their security products into that platform, so that there is only a one-stop, like I said, a one-stop shop really for your analysts there. So it's always growing. There's always changes. It's always being enhanced, just making it potentially easier and easier for your analysts.
Okay, what products and solutions can we feed into it?
Yeah, so like I said, you can bring in Microsoft Sentinel now into there, so you can now manage majority of that capability from that portal. It still sort of jumps out into the Azure portal when it needs to, when there isn't full, they haven't fully adopted, the configuration in that portal. You've then got your main defenders. So your Defender for Endpoint, your AV and EDR capability. You've got your Defender for Identity, Defender for Office for your email security. And now they're bringing in Defender for Cloud. So now you can see all your stuff from your Azure, AWS, and GCP, sort of those security side of things that Defender for Cloud provides. And you've also got your CASB, your Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, MDA, going in there. And what they've recently done, from what I've seen in recent posts, is they're now bringing in Defender for IoT into the mix. So now within the assets bit for devices, the IoT tab now has IoT/OT on it. So now you can see your assets all in one place. So I think, and you can bring in the Microsoft Defender Threat Intelligence that comes into that portal as well, and kind of with all of those sort of capabilities coming in there, you then get your holistic view of all your vulnerabilities, because that comes from comes into that exposure management that they released in at Microsoft Secure in March. So that's bringing in your attack paths. That's coming from Defender for Identity and Defender for Cloud, and as it grows, it will come from the other products as well. So it's definitely a really big suite of products, with Microsoft bringing in all of those other feeds from their products, their security products, going into there.
Yeah, I get the feeling that we're just going to end up having two portals. We're going to have security.microsoft.com for all the security suite, and then we're going to have purview.microsoft.com for, because they're doing that convergence on the data security side as well, with Azure Governance portal into the new Purview portal. So I think we're just going to end up with two panes of glass, I think, for each side. Because I can remember watching a webinar a long time ago and it was weird because it was really random that there was a recording that was surfaced in SharePoint the other day, and I was randomly started watching it, and I scrubbed to it, and I remember watching the webinar, and the person from Microsoft was like, and it was a Defender for IoT webinar, and they were like, it's all going to be in one place. It's all going to be merged into one thing. And I think that's what they're just doing. I assume they're going to keep their portals for configuration and specific management, but they're going to try and bring it all into one place so people don't have to. Is it people, or do you think it's like Copilot for security? Do you think it's AI, bring it all into one place, make sure everything's got APIs so it can all talk together? Don't know.
That's a good point. That's probably a point that I missed, is that Copilot for security does sit in this portal, the Defender XDR portal, or this unified, operational security operations platform. And on Copilot for Security's release, it was all around. It was in effect the Defender XDR portal, and there wasn't necessarily direct access to Sentinel or being able to use it in Sentinel. But with that new connection for Sentinel into Defender XDR portal, it's now the instance and things like that are all going into that portal, which then means that Copilot for Security can then do its summarization and things like that because it's all running off that same engine. So it might just be a conversion of or bring in the AI that is in Defender XDR alongside and enhancing what's in Microsoft Sentinel, but also, like you said, you then got your Copilot for Security sat on top for allowing you to do summarization, querying, enhancing the speed that you can gather information or respond to incidents.
Yeah, exactly. That probably brings me on to my next question. What is the benefits of this newer platform for security analysts?
Yeah, so we've kind of talked a little bit about this. It is all in one place, which means you don't have to look at Sentinel. Which, don't get me wrong, within Sentinel you can bring in the alerts and incidents from the Defender XDR portal to it. But then if you want to do any investigation into the logs that are being collected by the Defender products, then you've got to change portal. So that's one key benefit there is, like I said, it's all in one place. You can do that, advanced hunting or summarization or querying about the assets, things like that, all in one place. That's probably one of the main benefits. The other benefit at the moment, at least, is that because you can now see in the advanced hunting, you can now see the Sentinel, the Sentinel tables, which means that alongside all the tables for your Defender products, so Defender for Endpoint and things like that, where they've got network, device network access logs and things like that, and processes, you can now do a cross query against those tables with all your Sentinel ones. And previously, you wasn't able to do that. The only way you'd be able to do a query against Defender, data and Sentinel was to ingest it into Sentinel, which potentially could be quite costly because the amount of data that the Defender products pull, from the endpoints and things like that. So this brings that enhancement that actually you got all your data in one place. A lot of it, or part of it, I suppose actually most of your Microsoft stuff is then included in your licensing pricing and things like that. And then your third-party data or other sources that are not Microsoft, your firewalls, your VPNs and anything else, AWS, etc., and GCP, then you just pay for that for its storage in Azure, but you can still query it. But with that cross query, it means that you can create custom detection rules. You can actually do queries across that data and now build new content there that previously you couldn't do. You couldn't really do that query without potentially doing a log, a playbook or log analytics. Not log analytics, Logic app, sorry. A Logic app to be able to do that querying for you, which then would in turn potentially, cost you to run that, that playbook at, X amount of times whenever there's an incident. That's probably another benefit. And I guess the other one is that it's, configuration. I mean, not necessarily, this isn't necessarily for a SOC analyst or a security analyst, but maybe for the teams, maybe the IT security that are managing the config. All of this config is now all in, or majority of it, I should say, is all in one place, in one portal. So now you can manage it, in one portal and do all that configuration. Um, other benefits. I guess the other one is that because that data is all in one place, and I know I keep going about the data being in all one place, but it allows you to have your asset list across all of those products, all of your identities in one place. But also, I talked about the the exposure management, being able to, and the vulnerability management side of things. The SOC being able to understand how what risk the organization is at, based on current attacks happening in the world, and your mitigation against it. But also, where are the risks in the organization? When you're doing your analysis on an incident, and you find out it was attacked by a vulnerability, that that's the way they got in, or they compromised the endpoint. You can now look at, well, actually, what else has that vulnerability, and how do I patch it? That's all in one place if you've got the whole sort of suite of products there. So I think it's that whole everything together is the main benefit. And I guess, as we kind of briefly talked about, Copilot for security, if you're wanting to help do some analysis, or at least be able to use prompts, natural language in some form, to ask about the data or about an incident, that's available to you as well, to maybe help maybe not the analysts that are maybe just learning and building up through the ranks, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of complexity with how all of the solutions lock together, if that makes sense. Especially with organizations that have sort of spread their security portfolio across multiple vendors. Sentinel is quite... If you're not in the world of MXDR, Sentinel allows you to, or any SIEM, I suppose, really, allows you to bring sort of generic log sources together, doesn't it? You can... So, because a lot of the time when I'm talking to organizations, is they don't know where everything is, and sometimes even down to the technical level, because there is just so much, isn't there?
Yeah.
So the fact that it may, well, you could also say that, or having it all in one area might even be as overwhelming, if that makes sense, right? But at least, hopefully, our utopia is that it will be in one area, or two, or three. It's not, it's not spread around. To get your your sort of holistic viewpoint of your security solutions, if that makes sense. Because when you talk to organizations and you're saying, oh yeah, your E5, you can turn on this, and then you can turn on that, and then you can turn on this. And then people sort of glaze over because there's just so many different products. And I'm not criticizing the amount of products, and I'm not criticizing the fact that the products exist. I think the problem that we're attempting to solve is inherently complex. So it requires a lot of different solutions to meet like the challenges of like modern cybersecurity, right? So the fact that they are now joining everything together, it makes even more sense, because even just having one, like Microsoft has just got so many different solutions. They are almost siloed in a way from each other, aren't they? Because, if like take the IoT example, if you're looking at your OT in one place, you're looking at your enterprise IoT in another place and trying to communicate that. Now it's just like there's different sensors for those two things, but where you actually interface with them on a day-to-day ops perspective is in the same place. And that's really good for visibility, because you don't want the people that are running your, let's say your SOC is internal, as an example, and maybe it's just part of like your IT, team's BAU to keep an eye on it, basically. Maybe you don't have a outsourced 24/7 SOC or your own 24/7 SOC capability. Even for those teams, they need as much sort of assistance and convergence as they possibly can, because they can't be checking like 4 or 5 different portals to have good visibility.
No, and the other thing I'm kind of seeing as well with this portal is that the products themselves are kind of, Defender for Identity had its own portal. I mean, it's been named a couple of times now, but when you look at it in the this platform, this portal, it's not called Defender for Identity. It's called, in the settings, it's Identity. So it's kind of becoming part, this platform is now becoming the product in effect, and then all you're now seeing is that Defender for Identity is now just the mechanism to do the monitoring, to bring the data in. The sensors are the part that you bring in any config there. So now it kind of feels like, and it's kind of the similar thing I kind of feel with SharePoint a little bit with Teams. SharePoint is still there as its own product kind of thing, but if you're an organizer that just uses Teams and that, you don't really go into SharePoint.com directly and start building stuff. You're always in the Teams bit and accessing files there. It kind of becomes a sort of background service now. That it's you build it, you configure it, and now the main product now takes over, and that's how you sort of visualize it. And that's kind of how all these products are now kind of coming in. Even Defender for Endpoint really is just endpoints at the back end now. So you're now starting to just say, well, actually, Defender XDR is the product, and then you've bought the that part of the service, endpoint protection and identity protection kind of thing. That's what it kind of feels like now. From my side, it's not individual products anymore. It is Defender XDR or XDR portal, and you want protection for identity, so you buy that SKU kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. And I like that they take the product names away and they make it like a more higher level overview of the different sort of areas, controls that you need, and sort of solution areas that you need to cover.
Yeah.
Okay. How much does it cost?
So this platform itself, technically doesn't cost anything to have. It's more around the products that you've, or the services you've got connected to it. So I don't have the exact costs on me because it's going to be the whole E5 security SKU plus Sentinel kind of scenarios, plus if you've got Defender for IoT, running kind of thing. So this is the platform itself is included. It's probably the best way to say it, included in the price of the products that you purchase. So even if you have one, you're a small organization, you've only got 10 users, and you've bought, say you've bought M365 E5 sort of capability, you've got all this power outside of sort of Copilot for security, because that is an add-on on top. You've got this platform to use with all that, once you've enabled all that functionality. So even for the small businesses, you can get all this capability into one portal, which I think is quite powerful, really. It's just based on what you're feeding. I guess you're feeding the portal, the data and the instance kind of thing. So yeah, not really much cost in the platform itself, but it is on the products that you feed. So like I kind of talked about the products earlier, they can be bought standalone, or you can buy them in a EM&S, Enterprise Mobility Security E5. Some of that capability is in, but most of it is in the Microsoft 365 E5 security add-on. That gives you most of that capability there. plus your Sentinel ingestion, which is an Azure consumption for all your third-party logs kind of thing. So yeah.
Nice. Thanks, Alan. Anything else you want to cover?
No, I don't think so. Like I said, we did do an episode on Defender XDR portal when it was first sort of announced. Season 5 episode 2, so they must have sort of the Defender XDR portal at least, which was just the rebrand really of that portal before they brought Sentinel in. It's probably worth a listen, and I think we've got a couple of episodes around the products themselves that feed into it to give you an understanding of that. But yeah, no, I don't think there's anything else. Everything's moving into that portal, so it's the place to kind of start working from, I guess.
Nice.
Yeah, so what's next week's episode, Sam?
Well, it depends how timing sits, because we are near the end of the month. So I'm thinking, what do you want to do? Do you want to do another episode, or should we do our July news episode next week?
We can do. Let's do our July episode, news one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's just a bit weird because the 1st of next month is next Thursday. So, and our episodes usually go on Friday. So, but that should be okay then.
Yeah. Let's do our news update. Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Alan.
Yep. So did you enjoy this episode? If so, please do consider leaving us a review on Apple, Spotify, or YouTube. This really helps us reach out to more people like yourselves. If you have any specific feedback or suggestions to our episodes, is there a topic you want us to cover? We have a link in our show notes to get in contact with us.
Yeah, and if you've made it this far, thanks ever so much for listening, and we'll catch you on the next one.
Yeah, thanks all.